Pick any group of people who have ever fought for something. A tribe, a kingdom, a football club, a nation. The first thing they do before the fighting, sometimes before the talking, is make a symbol. A mark that says, we are this. Not that, this. Something to paint on a shield. Sew onto a tunic. Fly above a castle wall so that men dying 100 yards away know they are not dying alone. Human beings have always done this. The question is why it took until the 12th century for someone to write the rules down. The answer is a battlefield in the Middle East where you could not tell friend from enemy. And the system they built to solve that problem became the visual DNA of every nation on Earth. Look at the flags flying over Europe right now. Sweden's blue and yellow cross, Denmark's white cross on red, the Union Jack with its 3 crosses combined, Austria's red, white, red stripe. Every single one traces back to the same place. Knights painting symbols on shields during the Crusades. That's not a metaphor. That's not symbolism. That's literally what happened. The Crusades created the visual language we use to define nations, and nobody talks about it. 1100s, the Crusades begin. You've got thousands of knights in full armor, faces completely covered by metal helmets, fighting in the desert heat. And here's the problem nobody thinks about. You can't see who anyone is. Your own brother could be 3 feet away and you'd have no idea. That French knight looks exactly like that German knight, looks exactly like that enemy Saracen in captured Christian armor. Friendly fire isn't just possible, it's guaranteed. You need a way to tell friend from enemy when everyone's face is hidden and you're fighting in the chaos of medieval combat. Europe's solution? Paint symbols on shields, crosses, lions, eagles, big, bold designs you can see across a battlefield. This system got a name, heraldry. That's the formal word for identifying people using specific symbols and colors. Think of it like a visual ID system, but with strict rules. Your coat of arms is your personal symbol, the unique design that represents you and your family. It goes on your shield, your banner, your surcoat, your seal. It's yours. And when you die, it passes to your son. Same design, generation after generation. Before the Crusades, people used symbols or banners, king's dragon, a duke's raven, but they were random, temporary, personal. No rules, no system, no permanence. The Crusades changed that. When you need to identify armored knights from different kingdoms fighting together in a foreign land, you need something better than chaos. Now here's what made heraldry different from every battlefield symbol that came before it. Religion. The Crusades weren't just wars, they were holy wars. Pope Urban II launched the First Crusade in 1096, and he ordered every knight going to the Holy Land to sew a cross onto his tunic. That cross was religious identification. I am fighting for Christ. Different kingdoms used different colored crosses, white for France, red for England, black for Germany, but every Christian knight wore a cross. And when Pope Eugenius III granted the Knights Templar their distinctive red cross in 1147, he wasn't just giving them a logo, he was giving them divine legitimacy. Red for the blood of Christ and martyrdom, white mantle for purity and chastity, the cross placed over the heart, literally over the heart, so they would never be tempted to turn and flee. That's not decoration. That's religious symbolism embedded into identity. And look at the medieval sword. Any medieval sword, movies, games, museums, doesn't matter. See that horizontal bar between the grip and the blade? That's the crossguard. Now look at its shape. It's a cross. Before the Crusades, sword guards were simple, curved, angled, minimal. Just enough to protect your hand. Viking swords, early medieval blades, no cross shape, just function. Then the Crusades happen, and suddenly every sword guard becomes deliberately cruciform. Straight horizontal bar, vertical blade, together forming a perfect cross. Knights weren't just carrying swords, they were fighting with the cross literally in their hands. Every swing, every strike, visual reminder they were soldiers of God. Practical, yes, it protects the hand, but it was also intentionally symbolic. And 900 years later, every sword you see still has that cross-shaped guard. The Crusades, hiding in plain sight. And that religious framework is what made heraldry permanent. The Pope sanctioned it, the Church recorded it in monasteries. Religious military orders, Templars with their red crosses, Hospitallers with their white crosses, Teutonic Knights with their black crosses, they standardized it, enforced it, spread it across Europe. Heraldry wasn't just battlefield identification, it was Christian identity. And when those symbols evolved into national flags centuries later, they carried that religious legitimacy with them. The Nordic cross flags, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, Finland, Iceland, every single one traces back to Christian Crusader heritage. That's not coincidence. That's claiming religious history as national identity. But heraldry was more than just symbols. It became the first systematic visual language for identity in European history. Rules about colors: you can't put red on blue or gold on silver. Rules make symbols visible at distance. Rules about inheritance: your father's coat of arms passes to you identical. Rules about uniqueness: heralds tracked every design to prevent duplicates. This wasn't casual. This was organized, regulated, permanent, and it worked so well that the system spread beyond the battlefield. Cities adopted coats of arms, universities, guilds, religious institutions. Everyone wanted in on this visual language because it wasn't just identification anymore, it was legitimacy, it was authority, it was heritage. Now here's where it gets interesting. Japan had the exact same problem at the exact same time. 1180 to 1200, the Genpei War. Samurai in full armor, faces covered, same battlefield chaos as the Crusaders. Japan's solution? Colored flags and family crests called mon. But here's the critical difference. In Japan, everyone could have a mon. Farmers, merchants, samurai, nobles, 20,000 different designs across the country. It was democratic, personal, beautiful. In Europe, only nobles could have coats of arms. It was elite, exclusive, tightly controlled by heralds who decided who could use what symbol. And that difference, that's everything. Here's how heraldry became nationalism. 3 steps spanning 6 centuries. Step 1. Personal symbols. 1200s knights carry heraldic shields into battle. These symbols become hereditary. Father passes to son, generation after generation. The 3 lions of England belong to the royal family. Step 2. Symbols outlive families. 13 to 1500s, noble families die out. Wars, plagues, no heirs, bloodlines end. But the symbols don't disappear. They attach to the land itself. The Duke of Normandy's family ends, but Normandy keeps his lions. Personal symbols become territorial symbols. Step 3. Territories merge into nations. 1400s to 1600s, Europe consolidates. Small kingdoms unite. Duchies merge. Nation-states form. And when territories merge, their symbols merge. England's 3 lions, Scotland's red lion, Ireland's harp, they combine into the United Kingdom's royal arms. Personal symbol becomes territorial symbol, becomes national identity. That's the evolution, and it only worked because heraldry was elite and exclusive from the start. 1700s to 1800s, the age of nationalism begins. American and French revolutions. People stop seeing themselves as subjects of a king and start seeing themselves as citizens of a nation. Nations need symbols, flags, coats of arms, visual identity. And what do they use? Heraldry. The Union Jack 3 heraldic crosses combined. St. George's Cross for England, St. Andrew's Cross for Scotland, St. Patrick's Cross for Ireland. All medieval, all from the Crusades-era. Nordic flags, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, Finland, Iceland, all crosses. All Christian symbolism from when Europe was fighting in the Holy Land. Austrian flag? Legend says Duke Leopold V's white surcoat was soaked in blood at the siege of Acre in 1191. His belt kept one strip white. Red, white, red. 800 years later, still Austria's flag. Danish flag? The Dannebrog. Legend says it fell from heaven during a crusade in 1219 at the Battle of Lindanis in Estonia. Still Denmark's flag today. Oldest continuously used national flag in the world. Are the legends true? Doesn't matter. What matters is that when nations formed modern identities, they chose symbols from the Crusades. That wasn't random. Now pause for a second. Why does this matter? Because we're told the Crusades were nothing but bloodshed and fanaticism. Just violence. Nothing of value came from it. But that's not true. The Crusades created systems. sophisticated, organized systems that outlasted the wars themselves. Heraldry is one of them. It became the first universal visual language for identity in Western civilization. Think about what heraldry actually is. A system of rules for creating symbols that are unique, recognizable, hereditary, and regulated. That's not primitive. That's sophisticated. And it worked. It worked so well that 900 years later, we're still using it. The College of Arms in England, founded 1484, still exists, still grants coats of arms, still follows rules created during the Crusades. When new nations form, when organizations need symbols, when anyone wants visual identity, they use principles born from Crusader-era heraldry. The visual language of identity itself. That's what the Crusades gave us. And you can see it right now. Look at the flags flying over Europe today. Denmark, Sweden, Norway, Finland, Iceland, Nordic crosses, all explicitly Christian symbols from the Crusades period. England's flag, St. George's cross. St. George became England's patron saint during the Crusades. His red cross was carried by English crusaders in the 1200s. Switzerland, white cross on red, Christian Confederation symbol from the 1300s. Spain, coat of arms with castles and lions from the 1200s. Medieval heraldic symbols still official today. Poland, white and red from medieval coat of arms. Belgium, Germany, Luxembourg, all using heraldic colors from medieval coats of arms. Albania, Serbia, Montenegro, double-headed eagles. That's Byzantine and Holy Roman Empire heraldry from the medieval period. Out of roughly 50 European countries, over 30 have flags that directly trace to medieval heraldry or Crusades-era Christian symbols. This isn't ancient history, this is current reality. European nations are still using the visual identity system created during the Crusades. So here's what people miss about the Crusades. Yes, they were wars, yes, they were violent, but they also created systems that outlasted the violence. Heraldry was born from necessity on a battlefield, but it became how Europe organized identity, how nations formed visual language, how the concept of national symbol even works. A sword shaped like a cross, a shield painted with lions, a flag that represents a nation. These aren't relics of a dark age. These are functional systems still operating today. So next time someone tells you nationalism is meaningless, or flags are just cloth, or symbols don't matter, remember this. They survived because they meant something real. The Crusades didn't just change medieval Europe. They created the symbols we use to identify ourselves today. Because they're not just symbols. They're who we are.